Hi, welcome folks to the very first episode of the TTR podcast. TTR stands for Tabletop Rewind. My cohort is AJ here, and I'm Tyrell, and more commonly known probably as Sabayan. Links to our individual stuff will be in the description. AJ, feel free to introduce yourself.
My name is AJ. I am a United Methodist pastor in Southern Ohio. Been tabletop gaming for pretty close to 20 years now. My first tabletop gaming was more than 20 years ago, but been doing it pretty consistently for about 20 years now. And then video gaming, console, PC, MMOs. If there's an MMO out there, I've probably played it, unless it's Black Desert. Much love to the Black Desert fans, yo. But that's me. How about you, Ty?
I grew up, I've played every major console that there's ever been released, starting with the Atari. I actually owned a Jaguar.
Oh, nice.
And a Sega CD. But, I wouldn't call myself a traditional gamer of those times. I didn't really get into it until the Nintendo 64. I started playing D&D before the Nintendo 64. But that's what it is. I've been basically playing D&D, AD&D 2nd edition, since I want to say 97.
Nice.
My very first character was a gray elf with the name Kinos. It was just Sonic spelled backwards.
Sonic, huh? That's cool. It's that's also the name of the main good city in the EverQuest franchise. I don't know if you played that.
Oh yeah, I always pronounce it as Quinos.
Okay, yeah, it was Sony EQ backwards. My first character was a wood elf, and I don't know why I did this, but it was a female wood elf fighter cleric, and I wanted to be able to shoot things, and I wanted to be able to help people. And so the DM said, "Well, okay, why don't you play this?" And I never really learned the system. I just said, "Hey, can I do this? Can I do that?" You know, and he said, "Yeah, roll one of the ones over there." And the first session, I was in the Army. I was in Germany. Went to a buddy's house on Friday evening after work, and we played until Sunday afternoon. It was just an incredible session, and I've spent the rest of my gaming career trying to recapture that feeling, because there's nothing like the first time.
That's very true, though my very first character died within 10 minutes of the opening of the session. I was an evil son of a bitch. I was the little brother who their parents forced to go spend time with because they couldn't afford a babysitter.
Have you ever heard of Mikey Mason? He's a YouTuber. He does comedic music, but he does a lot of D&D stuff.
Not actually familiar with it. My very first entertainer that I've really got familiar with D&D stuff was actually Marcy's Playground.
Okay, I'll have to look that up.
They did the song Sex and Candy.
Really? And they do D&D stuff?
They had a song called The Cloak of Elvenkind.
Very cool. Very cool.
Because apparently they played D&D on their bus as they went across country.
I've got friends in the Navy who tell me that there's always a D&D game going on down in the galley, because that's something that you can do while you're on ship. You can't play video games. You can't, you can't do a whole lot, but you can play D&D all you want.
Yeah. Well, that's one thing I've always heard is you will find D&D in two places every time. College campuses and military bases.
Yeah. My best D&D experiences came from college. When I was a junior, I decided to get back into it and went to local game store, and I said, I want to buy some D&D books. And the guy there said, oh yeah, here's what you want. You want the second edition AD&D stuff because this third edition crap is just a money grab. And so I bought the second edition stuff, and I didn't know how to play it. I didn't know anybody who did know how to play it. Those books just sort of sat on my shelf for a while. And a friend of mine came over to visit once, and he said, hey, you play second edition D&D? I said, well, I always wanted to. And he said, well, I've got some third edition stuff. Why don't you come over? And from then on, third edition was my jam. Played third edition 3.5 and then Pathfinder. And then I tried fourth edition, and I went right back to Pathfinder. And so I've been playing essentially third edition 3.5 since it was released, and just that's my system.
Yeah. Well, third edition for me is where I really understood the rules. Yeah, I started with second edition. I never DM'd second edition. Maybe that'll change with Tabletop Rewind. Shameless plug on our own channel.
There you go. Hey, and I've got a great big box of second edition books right here that a buddy of mine gave me when his father passed away. May his memory be a blessing. And so I've got tons of resources, tons of materials, and I'm sure we can find the PDFs online somewhere. We'll see what we can do to put the game together.
Yeah, I'm actually working with a community online about putting together a functional rule set for Fantasy Grounds. And I've just got to finish up, or one of the guys is just finishing up the reference manual.
Nice. So you and I play in a couple of games together. I GM one, you DM the other. Why don't you tell the people about your game?
So my game started as an idea of bottom-out design. You start with the world, basically 9 hexes on the map for the world, and I went a little more than that. But that was the basic premise, and it's just to be a little more freeform. Because I prefer homebrew settings myself, though I hate building pantheons. Always have.
Yeah, I also do homebrew stuff because I hate it when my players say, "No, dummy, Neverwinter is southwest of Waterdeep." Yeah, it is. Okay, but I'm the DM, so I'm not wrong. Yeah.
That's
so
one
you're
thing
doing
the DM's guide always says.
That's right. So you're doing a big sandbox game then?
Yeah, that's the whole idea anyway. I'm probably just going to use free modules off of DM's Guild. Because I don't actually plan adventures very well.
I do a lot of planning. I do a lot of pre-writing. I do a lot of world building. And then my players say, "Yeah, we don't want to do any of that. And so it usually goes off the cuff for me as well. My favorite memory of this, actually, I called some buddies over when we were in college, and I said, "Hey, let's do a one shot." It was Saturday afternoon, and everybody was done with their homework, and we were bored. We had nothing going on. And so they said, "Yeah, great." We all gathered on a friend's apartment, and So while they're writing up their characters, I create this really simple story. There's orcs in the forest, and they're hunting a village of elves, and they're picking off the kids, and they're killing the elves, right? I mean, it couldn't possibly be any more tropish than this. And so the Adventurers Guild of the nearby town might send my friends in the forest to go and save this elven village. Well, old evil dwarves. And so I start the adventure, and they're like, killing elves? Yeah, let's go kill the elves. And it just never works out the way you plan it to. So what I try to do now is I try to create a world. I was sandboxing long before sandboxing was a term. I did it back with the Star Wars D20 system back in the late 90s, early 2000s. I really love that system. But I create a world, and there are several things going on, and I let the players play in that world. And the players tell me the story. It's a lot of fun that way.
Talking about Star Wars, I don't actually, whenever I DM Star Wars, I don't actually use the galaxy or any of its history. I just throw it all out.
Oh, wow.
Like, no, you can't go to Coruscant, you can't go to Tatooine. I just use the system and the setting as, or the tropes of the setting, I guess I should say, as the backdrop. I don't want to have to deal with... The reason why I throw it out is because I don't want the lore hounds after me.
Yeah, that makes sense. You'll have people who, no matter how big the galaxy is, they want it to consist of Tatooine and Coruscant and Alderaan, and I want to go to those three places, and I want to see those three things. And there are billions of planets out there, so that's a fair segue into my game. You're playing an android mechanic in my Starfinder game, and we've had one session, but I've been cramming the system into my noggin for about 6 weeks at this point. There's the pre-generated solar system there, which is kind of neat, and there's 8 or 10 planets there, and a couple of space stations.
Yeah, and then they also have that Pack Worlds book about to come out too.
Right. But it seems to me that as soon as you have a whole galaxy to play with, you should play with the whole galaxy. And so I'm doing a homebrew thing as well, slightly inspired by the lore that Paizo has written, the wonderful, incredible lore that Paizo has written. I'm really looking forward to running Dead Suns eventually. But for right now, it's a lot of fun to have a universe of my own making. And to say, well, yeah, why shouldn't that be in the game? Because that's a thing. Yeah, sure.
Let your own tropes kind of build apart. Or build not apart. So. You can't really build things apart. I use words.
Words are hard. Okay, so the future of our TTR, Tabletop Rewind channel. We're going to be looking at game systems that we're playing now. We're going to be looking at game systems that we've played in the past, talking to people, and if this thing that we're doing catches on and people are interested, it could be something special. I'm really looking forward to seeing what happens.
Yeah, because... Yeah, there's tons of D&D channels and tabletop channels out there, but how many of them actually look at the mechanical history of the different things? And yeah, there's people that are obsessed with like Spelljammer or Planescape. Those were just settings within that haven't really been touched on since 2nd edition. whereas Ravenloft has had iterations throughout each of them. And I think it'd be kind of neat to take a group of players and play through Ravenloft using each edition of rules.
That would be fun. There's
And
probably
brutal in the earlier ones.
I know that Gygax's legendary adventure, Temple of Elemental Evil, has had iterations through all the systems as well. It might be fun to look at that, just given its its history, its closeness with the creator.
Very true. And then there's also stuff like White Plume Mountain. That wasn't a Gygax original, but it was remastered to 5th edition.
Nice. Very cool.
It was released in Tales of the Yawning Portal, along with Tome of Horrors, which, if I remember the history right, was made by Gygax to kill overconfident, cocky-ass players.
Is that the one with the sphere of annihilation in the mouth of the statue?
I think so.
Yeah. Anything that touches it is just annihilated immediately, and that's the most evil trap I can imagine. There's this black ball there. What are you going to do with it? Oh, I touch it. No, you don't.
It touches you. So, talking about the Spear of Annihilation, how would you describe to your player what would happen if they were to touch it? Like, their feeling the character would have.
Oh, I wouldn't describe a feeling at all. I would just imagine that the character winks out of existence as if it had never existed before. There's no corpse to heal. There's no spirit to resurrect. This character is utterly annihilated.
See, I always saw it as, like, as you pushed your hand through it, your hand would just disappear permanently. And it would just leave that numb feeling that, like, phantom pain amputees feel.
Okay, yeah, so you'd only have it annihilate the material that actually touched it rather than the whole being.
Yeah.
Cool. So you could hit it with a mace, and the head of the mace would disappear, and you'd be left with a handle. That's a cool idea. I like that.
Someday I also want to actually make a dungeon crawl that you find like crampons stuck in the side of a wall where someone tried to climb and then lost their footing, and so there's only left crampons. Or you find 9.5-foot poles because the end of it was bitten off by a mimic.
9.5-foot pole. That sounds fun.
So what is second edition to you? What does, other than Thaco?
Well, Thaco is a system that we still have. The only thing that happened with Thaco is that it moved up 10 increments on the scale. Thaco used to go from +10 to -10, which is a range of 20 increments, and all it did was move up from that to 0 to 20. So now, when we toss our d20s, we're still using the same system, but we're not using negative numbers. Thaco was a great system, and I understand the reasoning behind it. Arneson, when it was created, Arneson was a big fan of naval combat games. And with a ship, it doesn't, sit on the surface of the water. It draws some of the water. It's part of the ship is under the water, and you could hit under the water with a torpedo and deal damage to the ship. So with that thinking, with part of the ship being under the water and part of the ship being above the water, it just sort of lends itself naturally to the positive 10, minus 10 range.
Yeah. And yes, I heard you roll your d20.
I love my d20s. Oh yeah, what's that? Oh, cool! I always wanted some metal dice.
Yeah. Eventually, I'm going to buy those meteoric iron ones that you can get online. The
Nice.
dwarf stones.
Yeah, I've seen those. Those are awesome.
And they're not as expensive as I thought. At least last time I looked at them. And they're actually the larger ones as well. They're only like $50.
That's not bad.
For artisanal dice, I expect them to be like $200 to $300, which I will never pay.
Yeah, I was looking at a website, 25 and 40 20s, made of different materials, and some of them were just absolutely beautiful, like burnished copper and things like that. And the big ones were between $20 and $45, depending on what material they were made of. Now, some of them were made out of precious stone, and those were significantly more expensive. But yeah, I'd love to have a set of the burnished copper, or the it was called chainmail silver, just absolutely beautiful silver and white dice, or silver and black dice.
Yeah, I actually like these Ultra Pros that I have here. You can get them at any hobby shop where Magic is played. And they're not the spin down, they're actually the randomized, which is nice.
Okay, cool.
I hate the spin downs for tabletop games. So talking about, yeah, we've talked a lot about D&D and whatnot, but what about board games? What have you played with board games beyond just Monopoly or Sorry?
That's an area of utter ignorance. I'm a longtime fan of chess, but as for the board game community, it's just not something that I do.
I have a feeling you'd like Red Dragon Inn, though.
I like anything with red dragons in it.
It's a game with the idea of it's after the adventure and it's the after party of the adventure. And so your goal is to be the last one not drunk.
That sounds fun. I've been to a couple of college parties like that.
I was kind of thinking we could also do board games on the channel as well, depending on audience
that might be fun.
viewership. Since we have Tabletop Simulator.
We do. Yes, it's a great program on Steam. It's not all that expensive. There's a lot of workshop stuff that people are doing, putting out for free that you can just download. So it's worth a look.
Anyway, I guess we'll close this out here because we're still trying to figure out the direction with the channel. But I hope those of y'all that watch this, please feel free to comment down below. Give us thoughts, advice, things you'd like to see to many more geeks cover along the history of tabletop gaming.
And also, something that I've always wanted to do, subscribe button. Click that. Yeah, I get the point. I always wanted the point.
And don't forget the bell.
And the bell. All right. We will see you next time on Tabletop Rewind. This is AJ.
And Ty.
Have a good one.